Hey, so my name is Akintayo Adewale. I am a creator, have been for very, very many years, but my background is actually in engineering design. Kind of an interesting story in terms of how I got here. But for the past couple of years, I started my own creative studio called Darker Pixels, which focuses on the use of Unreal Engine for storytelling, typically through animation. I do some motion design work. And I also do a lot of photography work. I do some music composition. There's a bunch of different things that a bunch of different hats that I currently wear. So Darker Pixels is kind of like this sort of multidiscipline amalgamation of things that I've done over the years. The idea was that I had initially started it as a base for the animation work that I'm doing. But I separately had a photography company, and I also separately had another music company that I was doing. So Darker Pixels Creative is now kind of the umbrella for all three, which is photo, music, and cinematics. One of the things that I'm doing is an IP. It's called Neo and Nubia. This story about these two Nigerian twins and their grandfather, and the adventures that they go on. It's STEM based. It's based on African history, and it's just super exciting. It's a fantastical lens that we're approaching this sort of book series and this animation series to tell the history of Africa and a lot of things that people just don't necessarily know about because it's not necessarily taught. So I'm super excited about that. I raised my hand and was like, I'll do the animation. So I don't regret it by any means, but it is I learned very quickly that you can't do this by yourself. Like it does really require a team. And again, that's just coming into the industry. These are things I just didn't know. So I've learned so much in the last 4 years, particularly the last 2 years, especially with my time being in at CGS. So I have a full appreciation for all the people that I've been working with and the relationships that I absolutely love it. I love the CGS community, like just going on there, seeing what people are doing, cheering them on, sharing stuff that I'm doing, and getting feedback from other people, like legitimate like relationships, like legitimate people that are I can call like colleagues and friends, like like not just amalgamating a bunch of different names at a networking convention, but people who are interested, we're aligned, we have the same goals, same ideas, we're moving in the same direction. So that's something that I'm really happy about and appreciative of. I've been a creative for a very long time. My actual first love was with music, and so I've been doing music for the last, I don't know, 30 years or so. And I also have a technical background. So my background is actually in mechanical engineering, and that's what I went to school for. My favorite part of engineering was engineering design. So the design principles kind of carried over, and I went from mechanical engineering to audiovisual engineering design. So I was designing audiovisual systems for the last 20 years, video conferencing systems, audio conferencing, digital signage, and the whole nine yards. So there's a little bit of a parallel in terms of like where it's all ultimately going in terms of like what I decided to get into with regards to virtual production, just this industry in general. So this is industry like really on the newer side to me. It was something that came much later on. Kind of like my pandemic story, really, where I kind of stumbled upon Unreal Engine, was trying to figure out, what I'm going to do next in terms of my career, and just completely fell in love with it. And then just it's been a black hole of fun and joy since then. Yeah, it's been crazy. It's been crazy. I got my BSME at Northwestern University many moons ago. When I started getting into computer graphics and started getting into animation, I had been just utilizing YouTube, and just looking at YouTube tutorials and videos, and that could only get me so far, So ultimately, decided when I started my own studio, I want to make sure that I am investing in my education and formalizing it. And so I had done a lot of research online and had seen CG Spectrum, a few years prior. And when I decided to make the jump, then I decided to go full time, and I ended up landing on CG Spectrum as the place to be for real time 3D and virtual production. So that's kind of I really dove in and just made it mine. Yeah. I had looked at a few different schools. I wasn't looking at necessarily going into modeling or VFX or animation specifically, and I was kind of really focused on the real time 3D track. Again, it was all sort of brand new, and then I saw that CG Spectrum was offering this real time program. There was a couple other places, but again, it was very nascent, very new, so there wasn't a lot of formalized institutions that had formalized the program. And then I had a conversation with Simon, and I was like, I like Simon. Like it all just kind of started like it was very organic the way that it happened, and so that's kind of and it feels organic to this day. Just my involvement with the community and being at CGS and all the different transitions that have happened since I've been there. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up moving in the CGS direction. I started doing music back in the late '90s, early 2000s, and then in 2008, I ended up becoming the music director for this organization called AdColor, which focuses on diversity, equity, inclusion within the advertising, marketing, and media industry. So that was kind of like the first time I really, really was, getting my chops wet in terms of being able to, exercise just my creative juices and just getting those things flowing. And so, and then things just kind of built up from there. So I've been doing music direction for like almost the last 15 to 20 years. And then I started getting into photography. So for the last 10 years, I've been shooting photography professionally. And and then I was like, oh, well, why don't I do a little bit with animation? So it's been this sort of like this amalgamation of all these different layers of just creative disciplines that all really work well together for me. And I think the ultimate transition was when I saw The Mandalorian, and I saw all the behind the scenes that they're doing for The Mandalorian. That for me was like, okay, this is the direction that I think I want to go into. I've been wanting to go into cinematography for a very long time. I had the photography background. Like it all just started to kind of fall in place and made sense. And so that's kind of how I ended up landing, where I currently am. I didn't really actually get like a first break at anything specific. It's just been kind of like this sort of accumulation of different opportunities and talents that ultimately felt like it all added up to what I'm doing now in Unreal. Like I use everything that I've learned over the last like 15, 20 years, I use all of it inside of the engine as well. So yeah. What I would recommend is that you use everything that you have at your disposal, and definitely find some way to try to apply it. I think that's worked out very, very well for me, because, I have a technical background and a creative. So, working in real time itself is a perfect combination of sort of all those skills. So things that I was doing 20 years ago, like I was modeling, using like Pro Engineer and doing mechanical design modeling. All of a sudden, 20 years later, that stuff kind of comes back and all those principles of parametric modeling and so forth, which I'm not doing that specifically, but it's aligned with the other areas of the engine that I'm working in. So yeah, whatever it is that you've learned, whatever it is that you do, there's probably some way that you can apply it to, your current discipline. There's some stuff that I'm currently working on right now, which is super, super exciting. And again, this has been a very organic sort of process. I started with, my involvement with the animation fellowship at Epic Games last year around this time, and all of the different relationships that I built and the community that was built around that. And that ended up leading to another project where I was on this trailer for this video game. And then that ended up turning into another project for that I'm currently working on right now, which is a UEFN game, which I can't mention it at the moment what it's for, but it's for a really, really big music artist. And I talked a little bit about at Unreal Fest. I'm just in love with the idea of storytelling through still images is kind of like how I started, but then adding the additional layer of complication with moving images, but still I look at movies in such a different way now than before, understanding cinematography principles much more intimately, and having the engine there to kind of help me to practice those skills, in an infinite sort of way. Like there's no restrictions in terms of what you can do in the engine. And so that's what I really kind of hang my hat on every day is the cinematography, the cinematic side of Unreal Engine. I don't know. I can definitely see myself doing this for the rest of my life. Oh, a day in the life starts off with a nice forest bathe. I walk from my house to my studio, so that kind of nice to get some fresh air. I come in and I check all my emails and things that are pressing, and then I have a bunch of different things that I'm usually juggling between photography projects, between gaming projects, animation projects that I'm working on, and music projects. So those are kind of the four areas that I'm constantly like switch hitting with. Um, and It's all peppered in with family. touching base with my wife and doing things with my daughters and, talking to my son who's in school up in New York, and so I go hard from about 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then I shut it all down. I go home. I usually sit on the couch. I'm watching, Modern Family or or something with my daughters, and then get up and do it all over again. Yeah, I feel like I'm in a really interesting sort of position because I kind of came into this industry really just recently, a few years ago. So, um, you know, my perspective on it is not rooted in the traditional pipeline when it comes to productions utilizing for animation or the animation pipeline and so forth. So but I do have a lot of respect and a lot of acknowledgement for the fact that people who have been working for the last 20 to 30 years, that they've amalgamated skills that you can't do it overnight. There's no way, it's impossible. What it does open me up to is the idea of utilizing other technologies, emerging technologies, to help with me doing what I'm doing better, stronger, faster. So I definitely am open to you know newer technologies. And I think Unreal Engine is one of those newer type of technologies that allows me to do so much more better, stronger, faster. With regards to AI, I have mixed feelings about AI as everybody else does in terms of how to use it, and doing it in an ethical way. There's some ways that I'm trying to utilize it that's ethical, where I'm utilizing and creating my own data sets based on images that I've created, like photo images, illustrations for this IP that I'm currently working on, and then creating my own imagery from that. But again, that's more pre-production, nothing in actual production. Like for me, it's more for idea generation, coming up with cool concepts. But ultimately, for me, the idea is to always pass it on to human hands. I just that's the fun part, is working with other people, working with other teams. Like I've just found that over the last 2 years when I started my business, like that's been the most fun, is the community, the networking, the friendships. Like that's really what kind of keeps me going every single day. Bottom line is, make sure that you love what you do. Don't do it for money. Don't do it for the money, because that gets old really fast. I'm an older guy with, I got three kids and, a whole family. And it's like, what the one thing I realized is there's nothing more important than, making sure that you absolutely love what you do. You can go to it every single day, and if you love what you do, if you really, really enjoy it, you will find a way to make money doing it. You absolutely will. Because I think it's people are going to see the passion and the fire that you have, and they're attracted to that. People are attracted to people who love to love and love what they do. You know what I mean? So whatever discipline is that you're interested in at CGS, is just to make sure that that you really love it. Don't do it because your friend's doing it. Don't do it because you think it's cool. Make sure that you actually are rooted in the craft itself.